said cout, which is technically an object, but again we'll get onto that. And then two, this is actually called, these two here, although it's the same symbol as this, here this is not these are not considered brackets. These are what we call an operator. This is actually the in the insertion operator, I think it's called, or sometimes put to. I just like to call them chevrons because they look like chevrons. So it's the insertion operator, and after that, two double quotes. And again, when you type a double quote or a single quote, put the other closing quote in immediately because they almost always have to be in pairs. And here we can type some text, whatever we like. So we'll put hello world, and then after that, another insertion operator, and then endler, which stands for end line, and then a semicolon. So you think of these insertion operators, you think of them inserting this stuff kind of into this object. The syntax of this thing here, cout, is a little bit weird. So again, this isn't something that as a programmer you'd really even think about that much. You just get used to typing this with practice, with doing it over and over again. So you don't have to worry about it too much. And this endler is actually creating a blank line at the end of hello world. So if we output more text after this, we'd get more lines of stuff. And then finally, after that, I'm going to type return 0 semicolon. So it's another statement ending in a semicolon. And the 0 is actually a code that's, we say it's returned in this case to your operating system. And 0 by convention means everything's okay. So it's not an error code. Like we could say 1, 2 or 3, we could say that those are error codes, in our program. But it's a 0 to say everything's fine. And then let's run this again. So I'll click the run button. I want to save it, and it says hello world. So this is a complete C++ program. You can experiment with this a little bit if you want, but we're going to look at that more in a future tutorial. And probably at the moment, any change you make will probably break it, because at the moment, if you're new to this, you don't know what you're doing, and that's normal. It's also normal to have great difficulty remembering all this, because when you first see it, it just looks like nothing on earth, and that's why I'm taking it so slowly here. So yeah, just try to get this work. Try to get your IDE to generate this, and if you can be bothered, type it out yourself and see where you go wrong, because that's very useful to do. One last thing that I want to do in this tutorial is we're just going to look a little bit at the structure of the folders and the files that the IDE has actually generated for us. And again, you don't need to memorize this. I'm just kind of mentioning it to begin to get you familiar with it. If we expand hello world here, we can see there's a debug folder. And by default, most compilers will generate a debug. Actually, I'm not sure if it is the default, but certainly in this case, we developed a debug version of the program. So the program we've created is not intended to be given to people. It's intended for developing programs, and it's got special symbols in it that can help us find the bugs in the program. But what we can do is we can go to, let's see, project, build configurations, and I go to set active and release. And again, this differs depending on your IDE, but usually you can find a pretty simple way. Maybe in Visual C++, it's just a drop-down box on the toolbar or something. I don't know, because I haven't used it recently. But I'm going to go to build configuration, set active, release. And we say here that we've configured it to build a release target. The target is the program we're creating. So we're talking about creating a release target that we can actually release to people, give to people. And let's click project, build project. We've now got another folder called release. And if I expand that, this is actually our program, and I can run the release version as well. And it says hello world. Let's now, so here's the source folder with hello world.cpp. Let's just go to the console and take a look at this. So I'm going to show you console instructions here on my Mac, which is a Unix-like system. Very, very common to create C++ in a Unix-like system, for example Unix or the Mac OS or Linux. But if you're using Windows, then the commands you'd have to type would be a bit different here. And I'm not going to get into a tutorial on console commands, but I'll explain a little bit. And it is, if you don't know how to use a console for your system, it is worth learning, because that's probably something that you will need later on if you're going to be a C++ developer. So let's go to the terminal here in the Mac, and in Windows it's called the Windows console. And you used to be able to start it by going to the Start menu, and then in one of the sub-menus there was something called Command CMD, or you could go Run Command CMD. But anyway, so I'm just going to go to this program here. I'm going to click on the program folder, the root folder, go and right-click and go to Properties and Resource here, and there you can see where the project's actually created. So I'll just copy that. Copy this path, and I'm going to go to the terminal, and I'm going to type CD, and in double quotes let's paste in that path. So this will look a little different on Windows, but on Windows it's also CD, I think, change directory, and hit return. And then I'm going to do ls. On Windows it will be dir, dir. And here we can see the contents of my project folder. If I do ls source, that's src, we call this source code, the stuff we're actually typing, and I can see what's in it. Probably dir source would work on Windows, I think, and or you might have to cd into the actual source folder. I don't know, it also works. But here's my actual code, and in a Unix system I can do cat type h, and I'm using the bash shell here, so I can type tab to complete the file name, but don't worry about these details. I just want to kind of begin to get you familiar with this. And so there's my program. Let's go back, cd space ... I think on Windows there's no space after cd, but anyway, so we're in the root folder, and let's take a look at the release folder. So I'll say cd space release and ls, and we can see in here we've got, this is actually the program. It's not really good to have spaces in the name of a program, so if you release that you might want to rename it to get rid of the spaces, but I can run it. On Windows you probably just type the name of it, possibly in double quotes if it's got spaces. On Unix type systems we need / and hello world usually, and it's actually, it's prefixed the space with a / to escape it, but anyway. And if I hit return, there it actually runs. So I probably could just copy this program here, this binary file, and give it to someone else who has a Mac, and they could probably just run it. But it's normal with C++ to create installers that put all the right files that you need in the right place. And this program is going to be using some shared libraries. Like it's going to be using code that are in libraries located elsewhere on my system, and the end user might not have those libraries. I don't know. So for that reason, it's common to create installers that make sure everything's in the right place. But installers are outside the scope of this tutorial, and that's a separate thing, unfortunately, that you have to learn if you want to get seriously into distributing C++ programs to end users yourself. We've also got in here a make file, and again I'm probably not going to go into make files. Our IDE has generated it automatically for us, and if we look at it, it looks quite cryptic at first. It is possible to have a whole career in C++ without understanding make files, but on the other hand, many companies use make files to build C++ programs, and so it's probably worth learning if you're going to get seriously into this as a career. But if you just want to write programs yourself, you can probably just let your IDE deal with it and not worry about it. And we've also got the exact structure of these folders depends on your IDE. But let's take a look at this source folder here. If we go into SRC, there's like a sub source folder within this release folder. I don't really know why. And that's probably going to be different if you're using a different compiler or IDE. But one thing to notice is that there's probably going to be somewhere a hello world.o. That's called an object file. It's a binary file, but later on we say that we link it with the appropriate libraries to create the final program. And that's just something that I wanted to make you aware of at the moment. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. Don't feel intimidated by all those details. You can count your progress here as being totally successful when you can just get your IDE to generate a program and run it. Like I say, type it in as well if you can be bothered to, but first get your IDE to generate it and run it. And we're going to go over all the important concepts again later on. So that's it from me this time, and until next time, happy coding.